So the focus of today is just getting the most out of the tool chest. So ideally, you've been using Bluebeam Revu for a bit. So how can we become a bit more efficient at using it, ways to get your tasks done in a more efficient means? And one of the best ways of doing that is to leverage the tool chest inside of Bluebeam Revu. So I'll delve into some details around that. So before I get to all that, just a little bit about myself, who is US CAD, our objectives today, some Q&A, and if there's anything else coming up, we'll talk about those next steps here as well. So real quick, just a little bit of background on myself. My name is Ken Phelps with US CAD. I've been here for a few years now. I've been working in environments like this for well over 20 years, focused on everything from AutoCAD to Inventor from Autodesk and various machine design software. In the last probably 5 to 6 years, I've been focused exclusively on Bluebeam Revu. So this is all I do. I'm not distracted by anything else. Focus on the PDF design review process is my focus and my objective. I've helped a lot of folks go through and train on the software, implement customizations around the software, get the team up to speed on it. So all things Bluebeam Revu is what I do. So who is US CAD? So if it's your first time with us today, again, thanks, appreciate the time you're spending with us today. I do apologize for my voice too. If you've been on any other presentations I've done over the last year or three, I may sound a bit different. My sinuses are just kicking my behind right now. I'm all congested, so I may sound a little bit different. Hopefully I'll catch the mute speaker if I have to sneeze so I don't blow anyone's ears out. So US CAD is one of the leading AEC technology firms in the country. We're a Bluebeam Platinum reseller and Autodesk Platinum reseller. Some of the services that US CAD provides, everything around from BIM consulting, training, education on various products, scanning functionality inside of their project management, and even design team augmentation. So if you have a large project that came in, you don't have the resources to handle those jobs, we might be able to fill in the roles of being that production piece for you in the meantime. Various products, I mentioned Bluebeam, why we're here today, Autodesk, Leica system, Panzero, RIB, M Suite, CAD learning for video learning stuff. You get a whole breadth of resources at your disposal. It's up to you if you want to tap into it. US CAD is basically coast to coast. You got offices that you can see here on the screen. There's even people located in locations that are not defined here. We've got Florida and Michigan, Wisconsin, and Texas, and then we've got people that are kind of coast to coast that can help support you and your needs. So for today, our objectives that we have is I want to keep it kind of basic in the fact that I want to cover all the steps on how do you make a custom tool set? How do you go through the process of adding tools into that tool set? There are various ways that we can do that, either making one from scratch, stealing from the PDF that you may already have. So how do we get all the information into there? Then once you've developed that nice new fancy tool set, how do you share it with the team? So how do you get everybody else in the team on board with leveraging the same tools so you can have a standard way of approach of how you do your markups and the processes you need across the board? Everyone has the same tool set. So enough of that. That's my PowerPoint. Hopefully I'm not going to bore you too much with that. I'm going to do all of my information I have here live. There's no videos. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just picking and clicking as I go through this with you. So again, the focus of this isn't the basics of how to use Bluebeam Revu. I'm not going to go through how you add in the text box and that kind of stuff. It's just focused on the tool chest. So a tool chest is a little kind of toolbox looking icon I have here, in my case on the left-hand side. And this will have a default list of available tools in it. You may have used some of these in the past just because they're close enough to what you wanted. It worked for what you needed. That's great. But you can leverage this, meaning this becomes your library of tools, content that you want to repurpose across various designs that you're trying to go through and review. So how do we create our own? How do we add tools into it? And how do we share it? The three kind of basic things I want to look at here. And we'll spend the most time on adding our own custom tools into it. The creation and sharing, it's pretty quick. Making what you want to have in there is where you can really get some good efficiencies in the processes that you have. So first thing is making our own tool chest. So mine says, architect review here and contractor, DOT, whatever you may have inside of this list. Let's make one of those. At the very top up here, it says tool chest. You can select that, come down to the bottom of that list where it's got manage tool sets. Then you can choose add. Just choose to add in a brand new one. And you can call this whatever you want to call it. So the title field I have here is what's going to end up being displayed inside of Bluebeam Revu. So mine says construction road signs. That's the title of that tool set. So what do you want to call this? My new tool set. Name it whatever makes the most sense. Typically what I would recommend is having the name pertain to the types of tools that you're going to find within it. So if it's going to be for architectural symbols, have that be the name. Or if it's construction road signs, have that be the name, have that be the title. So you choose OK, it's going to ask you for a place to save this at. It should default to where you have the rest of your tool sets located, but you can put this wherever it makes the most sense. So now what I have, so at the very bottom, you see a new blank one showing up here, just called my new tool set, because that's what I named my first one. And it's also here at the bottom of my list. The order it shows up here matches how it's displayed on screen. So if that should be higher or lower in the list, move it up. So just select on the name of that tool set and use the blue arrows here on the left to move that up or down the left-hand panel. You can see I got mine roughly halfway through. So it's showing up roughly about over here. So put it where you want, wherever it makes the most sense. We'll just put mine towards the top so it's easy for us to see and reference. So you have your own brand new empty tool set. Now, how do we get content applied into it? So this becomes a matter of just using the tools, whatever it might be. If it's a different color highlighter, because that, the green means one thing and blue means something else when you highlight over those regions. Fine, then use those tools. I'll grab the highlight tool. And in my case here, it doesn't matter what I'm trying to highlight. At this point, I'm just trying to build out the tools to add into my tool set. This could be a blank drawing. It doesn't have to be a PDF with anything in it. So then change this. Adjust its properties to have the right information that should be added to this. So what is this for? So versus just being the name of the tool that was used to make that markup, in this case I used the highlighter. This is for, I don't know, how about past inspection or something along those lines, whatever you want to have this pertain to. I'll say if it's past, it should be green. That's good enough for me. Now I want to add this tool into that new tool set. There's a couple of ways to go about doing that. At the bottom of the properties panel, you'll see add to tool set right here in the options. You just choose the button for that. It'll give you a list of all the available tool sets that you have. You just choose which one you want to have that tool to be a member of. You can also get this same list by simply right-clicking on the markup. You'll find add to tool chest here. Then same thing, you choose which tool set that should be a member of. I'm going to put it in my new. Now the way that goes into the tool set, it's going to come into there as it was defined, as it was drawn. So if I use this tool again, you just select it and place it. It's a copy of the way it was drawn the first time. So more often than not, the next time you want to use that highlight tool isn't going to look just like this. I want it to be labeled as past inspection, and I want it to be green, but not this goofy angled short line being used here. I want to change how this is being stored. Right now it's going to store it as the way it was drawn, so it's in drawing mode. All you have to do to change this into what's called properties mode is just simply double click the icon. You can go through a right click, go to where it says the mode, because this will show you the mode it can change to. So right now it's in properties mode. I can change it back to drawing mode. Otherwise, you can go and change that to properties mode. I like double clicking just because it's faster. So now in properties mode, you can use this tool however you want to use that tool. You're not restrained by the way it was initially drawn. So it's that same approach for any of the tools that you want to repurpose. It could be as simple as the highlighter. It could be a piece of text, whatever it is that you wanted to then just repurpose, something that you'd use over and over and over again. It should be in your tool chest. Think of it like if you're in Civil 3D and you have your block library and whatever software you have, it's your tool palette. You want to repurpose that same content. It's just an asset, it's a resource. Now, taking this maybe a little bit further, you can add in more than just one object. So if you want to have some drawn geometry, got some lines, circles, rectangles, some text, it's a collection of content you want to have, you can add it all in. You just draw what you need. So this is just going through the process of making tools from scratch inside of here. So if I wanted to have a rectangle around this, maybe there's a line going through here. So kind of like I'm making a stamp, so to speak. I want to have all the content, and you drop in the text strings that you need. So this is a certain info string. Will be up here. Place another content. I'm just having multiple pieces that make this up. So you might type in whatever new info. Of course, I can't spell. So you type in whatever you need. So I got 3 or 4 things that make this up. Now I can't just take this and select it and just add that to the tool set, because it's going to add in each individual item as its own piece inside here. So I'd have a rectangle and a line and a couple of text boxes would be 4 independent pieces. So what you want to do first is to group these together to make, for lack of a better term, your block. Just like in AutoCAD, you make one symbol out of multiple objects. So to do that, you can select your content, and even just that, choosing your stuff, you may have seen this way I chose mine. I just right mouse click and drag over it, and that right click by default goes in your selection mode. So whatever markups you have on there, it'll just window around to select wherever you define that window to be. So you choose your content and then right click on it, and you have the option about halfway down the right click menu to group. You can also just use Control G to group that content you have selected together. So now it's one piece. So if I try to drag it around, it all moves together. Now I can take this, give it a proper name. So I wouldn't just take this into the tool set yet. I would customize subject. This is used for a certain purpose. Let's say it's my info mark or whatever you want to have this defined to be. Give it some context, give it some kind of meaning. Now this will come into play in a little bit when I talk about the markups list, and I can filter and sort and organize all that. This is where fields like subject come into play. And I can take this and add it to my tool set. Now, one of the benefits of what I did here is I can take that and drop it in, and it comes in just fine. But it's still modifiable. So if this info, say it was for a date, and you wanted to type in a certain date or a certain piece of info that should be entered manually every time, it's independent to how that date is being used, I can still just simply double click on this to modify the content. I can put in my new info here, and it's still seen as one collective block. That's one grouped item, but still flexible enough to be able to modify and edit and change if need be. If it's more stamp specific, you may want to use the stamp tool for that instead, but this is a way to put in a stamp-like object from the tool set. Now that can be, again, I'm not going to go down the stamps process for this today, but this could be a means to go through and make a true stamp. So it's pulling in dates that might be pulled in dynamically. So it's going to pull in the current date, the current time, and user, what have you, from those fields. So you could make an actual stamp and then just add that stamp to the tool chest also. So for example of that, if I just grab this default date time stamp, so that drops in my current date and time, I could take this and then also add it into that same tool set. Now I can grab it from here, and it has the current date and time brought in, but being pulled from the tool set. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go through and leverage stamps from the stamp menu process. They can be pulled from the tool chest as well. If you want to have that content to come through and be dynamic like this, so it's pulling in the current date and the current time, you got to make the stamp first using the stamp process, and then just add that stamp into the tool set. And one of the comments that came in from the questions panel here is you don't have to go through the routine of like the highlighter here to select it and right click and say add the tool chest. All the markups you do that you're adding in, so if I put in just a really elaborate line, it's in your recent tools. So this is one of the tool sets in your tool chest. You can just take it right from here and drag that right down into the current tool set that tool should be a member of. So that green highlighter I had before that was right here, past inspection, I can skip the whole properties panel, add a tool chest, choose the right one, and just drag it from recents. So this is also a way to then copy that content from one tool set to another. And that works between any of these. So if you're provided a tool set, maybe you work with a certain vendor or supplier of content and they produced a tool set, but you need 5 of those things out of that tool set they've made, and they have 50 inside of there, you can just drag the 5 you want out into your own. So if I wanted to have this highlighter from my contract review, I can just drag it into this one, and now I have that same tool copied over here. So there's other ways to go through and create and kind of flesh out what you want to have inside of that tool set without going through a lot of extra steps and bells and whistles to have to reinvent the wheel. Drag and drop. Just make your life a lot easier. Now, other ways to pull in content. So you can create your own. And this can be used this way for any one of the tools. I've talked about the really fancy highlighter and text, but it could be anything. If you're going through a certain way to trace out shapes, you want to trace out this building or this parking lot, or here's demolition phase 1, or however you want to trace it out. You just want to trace a region to be highlighted for a given purpose. That's a way to just designate that area. Same thing, just use the tool. I'm going to use just my really elaborate polygon tool to trace out some content. And the shape I'm making is fairly arbitrary. So I just use the polygon tool and then define its properties. What do you want to have that look like? What is this for? So this is going to be demo phase 1. So that's the subject to it. And I'll change the color so it's maybe orange, and I'll do a fill into here, and let's make that not quite so intense. That's what I want to do. I just want to outline the areas for demo. This could be for measurement tools as well. Okay, this is an actual area tool. I want to find out how many square foot need to be demoed. Versus doing the polygon, I would do the area tool instead. But it's the same approach. Use the tool, modify it to have the right properties, the right look and feel it's supposed to have, and then add it to your tool set. So in this one here, I've modified this, demo phase 1. I'll use that technique from before, just drag and drop. Now I have that tool, and that tool will stay there. I could be on a PDF, 3 days from now, and I still have that same tool available to me in this tool set. Now you can take the content also directly from the PDF. Say, for example, I want to have this speed limit sign because it's just here to reference. I don't want to redraw that same thing myself, having all the curves and the right font and the way it looks. It's already here. Use what I have in front of me. So one of the easy ways to strip out data from the PDF you want to just repurpose is through a function called Snapshot. It's like taking a screen grab, so to speak, of a region of the PDF. So the default tool here for Snapshot is just the keyboard shortcut is G. You can also find Snapshot here or on your edit menu. About 2/3 of the way down, you find Snapshot here as well. So I want to grab this speed limit sign. So I'm going to do a little bounding box just around the outside edge of this. So now whatever I have inside of that blue rectangle is copied to my Windows clipboard. I can paste that wherever I want. Be a brand new PDF into this same one, into a Word doc, it doesn't matter. It's copied to my Windows clipboard. Repurpose that wherever it makes the most sense for you. I'm just going to do it right here because my goal, my objective with this is to make a tool chest symbol out of that I can add into any PDF in the future. I'm just going to paste it right here. So your basic right-click paste, or even I'm just going to do Control V, your standard paste keyboard shortcut. Same thing. Now, being a markup, I'm just personally not a fan of leaving this the same color it was drawn as in the PDF. I want to change this to have it be seen as a markup, so it doesn't look like it came from the architect with this content. It's from me. It's as a markup routine. It should stand out. So what I would do here first is change its color. So it has just the default black line being used here. I want to make this red, blue, green, whatever it may need to be to fit into your process. Change its color. So to change it, right-click on the markup. See, maybe a third of the way down, just about, you got change colors. So source just means look for color A and change that to color B. So find me all of the black lines and let's make those black lines into red lines, or whatever color makes the most sense for you. Now I can take that and I could change the subject to it, modify its properties, give it some certain name. So this shouldn't be called just Snapshot. It's what it's for. We'll call it 15 mile per hour sign, or whatever you want to have that set to. Then add it to your tool set. So a number of ways to go through and just create the tool set in a way that's going to just make it more efficient for you to get your next task done. So in a lot of cases, a lot of those tools you want to have become measurement style tools. I want lengths, I want areas, I want counts of certain things. It's the exact same routine, just with the measurement tools. That's all that would be different about any of this. So on this page, I just went to this sheet because I have my scale already set inside of here. Just saves a step. Now for a length, what I tend to use here when I'm building out tools for clients is I don't use just the length tool. I'll use the poly length tool. So I can still get a straight, linear distance from point to point. But if need be, I can choose multiple segments as well. So if it was a route, you're doing, the piping or the plumbing, HVAC, conduit, whatever it is that takes in kind of this overall route distance that you're trying to understand, the poly length will go through and have all of the options there available to do that. Now, same as before, you'd modify this tool's properties. What should it look like? What is it for? So versus just being the generic name of the tool that was used to make it, we'll call this, I don't know, 4-inch conduit, or whatever name that you want to use for this. Call it what you want. Mess with its colors, even the line type. Maybe it's supposed to be a dashed line instead. You can customize this too, as far as the types of lines being used. That's a whole separate focus for all this, but you can go ahead and modify the types of line being used. You can customize your own line types as well. So here's a length of a certain piece of material, the 4-inch conduit being used. And again, save that into the tool set. So I'll do my right-click process for this, throw it in the same one. Now the measurement tools, much like the highlighter I did before, will come in as drawn. So they're in the drawing mode currently. Make sure you double click on those to toggle it into properties mode. Now I can leverage that however I need to get those lengths understood. Now, one of the nice things about this is that if you go through and spend the time to actually name these, the sorting process in the markups list down below will group all those like names together by default. So I have my 4-inch conduit here. So looking at my measurement column, it's got a 48 footer, 89 footer, 64. Overall of 4-inch conduit, it's 202 feet. So you can get the right quantities of what you're measuring right from this. And a lot of folks may have delved into things like on-screen takeoff and various tools like that to get a lot of this measurement, those takeoff steps to be done. And those work fantastic. But you may be able to go through and get 90% of that or better directly from Bluebeam Revu as you're going through and doing your markups with this tool anyway. You know, some of those other takeoff tools that are meant for that task specifically are not cheap. They might cost you $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per person annually just to maintain those seats. They're expensive. So with the markups list, you might have a whole host of various things you're trying to go through and take off. You got conduit, cabling, pipe, curb and gutter, landscaping, whatever it is that you're after to understand. You build the tools out to do that. It's the same thing. Use the tool, customize the tool, then save it. Now on the markups list, this can add another level of detail inside of the usefulness of the tools that you're creating. So this might be a step that you would actually put in front of the tool creation, is any custom columns. Is there information that you may use for this downstream? So is there a vendor list or a responsibilities list, who's in charge of making these changes to what you got for markups? However you wanted to leverage this down here, all of this is customizable too. If you want to have your own columns, like mine here for responsibility is one that I added. This PDF has that column in it. So I can go to any one of these and say, okay, person so-and-so is now responsible for addressing that issue. Yeah, I spent too much time watching Game of Thrones, but you get the idea. This could be anyone in your list and the company could be inside of there. So that's a custom column. It could be anybody, anything, any reason why you want to have information to be used downstream, fill it out here. To do that, so you want to add in a custom column, go to your markups list, go to columns, at the very bottom, you have manage columns. Custom column tab. So if you choose add, you can make a brand new custom column. And you got a handful of choices of what you can make for a type. Call it whatever you want, whatever makes the most sense for what information should be in that column and what is the information type. Maybe it's simply installed, yes or no, and it's a check mark. Is it a multiple choice list like what I have here for responsibility? Multiple things could be in that list. Simple date, even a formula. You want to take different columns and do some math equation with those, numbers, text fields. So you choose what makes the most sense for you. Now the intent for all that, so you go into all the effort of making the custom columns, giving you multiple choices, whatever you may have. Then when you use the tools, any custom field can be a default value with that tool. So for example, if I'm doing my conduit, I know that person so-and-so should be in charge of all the conduit issues or all the electrical or wiring or landscaping, whatever it may be. Those issues always go to person X. Before you add it into the tool set, any custom columns you have here are part of the properties panel, or even the markups list down below. Apply it. So if you know it's for a certain name, choose the name. Then when you add it to the tool set, that property is already pre-assigned. Every time you use the tool, that value is already there. You can always change it after the fact, but the default value is already set to a given condition. The whole intent is just to save you more time downstream, having to add and modify fields and values later. Do it up front. So all of this information you have, so you spend the time to make this breadth of tools, all the various things you want to use for takeoffs or markups, certain common notes and symbols you want to have, you can then build out your report. So all the information down here, you want to get into an Excel spreadsheet or just a PDF summary of all the content that's been done here. So in the markups list, there's a summary option located here. It's like a little box with the arrow coming out of it. So you choose what type of summary that you're making. And to be fair, it doesn't matter which one you pick. They all go to the same dialog box. So if I'm I wanted to make the spreadsheet and I want my CSV, and my mouse floated down and I hit XML on accident. It's the same dialog box, just go to your export as field and choose the one that you intended to use. I've seen a lot of folks will say, oh, that's the wrong one, and they'll close this out and they'll try it again to get back to the right dialog. It's all the same dialog box. Just choose the right export as option. Now, if you are trying to do something, especially for the takeoff side of this, you have a lot of measurements and areas and lengths and counts and all that kind of stuff you're trying to pull off the PDF. What you include can make or break how much stress you have over this. Is be careful of markups and totals. Because with this chosen, like using my 4-inch conduit here as my example, it'll have the 202 feet and all the individual rows as well. It includes all of that in the spreadsheet. So a lot of folks will go into the spreadsheet, take that whole column and just do a quick sum of everything in that column, and now they have double values because you have the totals already in the same list. So just be mindful of what you're trying to pull into that spreadsheet. Choose the right options to include. Even going down into filtering out the markups list. So if I don't need to have all the info mark little stamp I had and my date time stamp being used here, I don't need all of that involved in my summary report of this content. All I'm after is some different measurement values. On this filter and sort tab, you choose what you want to include. So maybe I'm going to go by subject. I don't want everything. I only want the 4-inch conduit. You can choose any one of these columns. So if you want it by a certain page or by a certain author of those, what type of comment, you choose any one of these categories. You can filter this list to extract out only what's relevant. It could be by a certain status of completed or incomplete or whatever you may need to understand. Filter that by that criteria and only pull out what you need. Same thing for columns. You might have a whole host of columns being used in the PDF, but in the report, I need just a small fraction of those. Uncheck the ones that you don't need. Even up at the very top of this, you can choose to include more than just this PDF. If you've gone through this routine to build out your tool set, review the various host of PDFs with this, you can load them all in here and just run one big report of all the PDFs for a job versus having to open each PDF individually to run it. Load them here. Even trimming it down to what pages you want to extract. Maybe you're marking up, a 500-page PDF, but I care about pages 12 through 50. Filter that down. Just change this to a custom range and say I want to care about pages 12 through, 42 or 24 or whatever. And it does just that range. Now for sharing this with others. So you've gone through all the effort, you've built out the tools, they all work great, and you like how they're functioning. I want to get this in the hands of everybody else in the team. So there are a couple ways to go about to share the content. It can be done individually. So the one I made here, my new tool set, I want to share just that. You can come in this little gear icon at the end, and I can then choose to export that file out. You can choose whatever place you want to save that to. That's a centralized spot for everyone to be able to access. Then once you have it saved out, you may just email the team saying, hey, I have a new tool set. You can find it here. For the recipient of that, everyone else in the team, all they would need to do is just simply double click on that file to load that tool set into their environment. Now it can also be shared from the entire profile. So the profile is kind of the snapshot of the entire interface of the software. So where the toolbars are located, what tools are on or off. This also gets down into the custom columns I had mentioned before. So if you do a lot of this, it's the first time prepping this for the team and you're customizing columns, the best approach would be to share the entire profile. Looking at the custom columns, I have the option then to save the customization here to that profile. So I would share the profile, which has the custom columns inside of there, the tool chest and all the various tool sets that are defined inside of it, how the toolbars are laid out, all that's part of the profile. So in those cases, to do that, review, about halfway down is profiles. Whatever is my current profile here is my review advanced. I could choose to save this and then export that entire profile out. And same thing, I would put this into a centralized spot. Everyone else is able to view that environment, double click on that profile to load that in. Now, a different means of sharing, because this might be 6 months into the process of you got Bluebeam Revu in the office, everyone's using it, but you're kind of working things through, you're adding new tools in as you go that are relevant and useful. There may be somebody who already has my new tool set on their machine, but you have 10 new tools on yours than what your coworker has next to you. An easy way to share the tools is just add them to a blank PDF. So again, by that I mean if I just make a brand new, just 8.5 by 11 generic PDF, drop the tools onto here and just use them. So it's going to ask me for a scale, good enough. Just use them. Then I can share this file. I can save this PDF. Then as the other users of this, I can kind of pick and choose, saying, yeah, that's actually that one. I like that one. So me as the other end user who doesn't have that tool yet, I can select on this and say, yep, I'm going to grab that and add it to my own tool set. So you can kind of pick and choose. Someone made a whole new list of 20 new tools. You can pick and choose the 5 that you need off of that PDF and add them to your own tool set. Just one of the other ways to share that with the team. I know I've covered a lot of stuff pretty quickly to go through and do it, but just a little nuggets in here to take the content, take the time to build out the content for the rest of the team to take advantage of. And I can guarantee you're going to be more productive with using the software to get your review tasks done inside here. If you have questions, feel free to type them in. I'm going to take a quick look at those here now. And yes, the webinar is being recorded. And at the end of this, it'll take a couple of days, but everyone who's registered for this should receive an email with a link to the video, as well as the attachment of any questions that have come through and the answers to those. So you have an email with a link to all of this. And the one comment about dragging it from there, you'll definitely be able to drag. You've seen me do it a couple times inside of here. So one of the other comments, questions about this is to take the content from AutoCAD, how we can repurpose that. Hopefully it made sense with the Snapshot tool. Again, that can be used for anything you have. I've gone through with some companies and they've actually made a drawing, and just simply inserted all their AutoCAD blocks in the drawing. So it was just something visual on screen to reference. Then print that to PDF and send it to someone else who has got Bluebeam Revu, and they can just strip from there, like I did that 15-mile-an-hour sign earlier, and just pull it right from the PDF to then build out the tools inside of the tool chest. Now, for a lot of that content, like the symbols, like that sign that came in here, let's just say, for example, to the sink, there's a certain size to this. So the size of how it's going to be repurposed also matters. So like the scale of that matters. So one of the options, one of the features that you have access to with the tool sets is that you can actually set a scale. So what this means is that this sets the base scale for any kind of symbols content, things that would be scaled up and down, like the sink or a door or a window, things that are a static dimensional size. Well, if I use that same sink I've got here on a different scale plan, it should be bigger or smaller to match. I can set a scale for that. So what is the initial defined as or drawn as scale the PDF was made? So like this right here is roughly 1/8 inch to a foot, I believe is a scale for this. So if I do my snapshot and I grab that tool, so now it's copied to my clipboard, I can paste that back in. And because of my own OCD, I can't let that go by and be black. It's got to be red or some new markup color. I'm going to add this into my tool set. So now it's back here again. But if I go to a different size plan, different scale plan, this won't work. It's the wrong size because this is 1/8 inch. So on the tool set, you come down here to set scale. So what is the baseline scale of the tools that would be from that tool set? Now you want to have it all be the same scale. I can't pull some things from the 1/4 scale plan and the 1/8 and the 16th and have them all in the same tool chest, the same tool set. It's one scale for all things as the base for that. But just for grins, I'm going to go back and just use 1/8 inch to a foot. Now this tool set will be scaled. So where that comes into play is if I were to change the scale for someplace else. I'll do one over here just next to it so my scale is different. Sure, 1/4 inch to a foot is the base of this data here. So if I put this sink in, do it here, it's this big. I go next to it, I changed nothing. It's now a different size, just to match the way the scale, the region is defined to be. So what this means is that if I use that symbol on any other PDF, if it's part of a detail or an elevation or the scale is different between those two, it'll be the right size. I know we're getting short on time here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time inside of this. If you have questions, keep on typing them. I probably won't have a chance to get to them here on screen, but I will definitely answer those, and they'll be in the spreadsheet that everyone's going to get at the end of this. So Q&A, I know I'm down on my last few seconds inside of all this. So for what's next, and if you have more questions, you want to see something that's just focused for you and your team to go through, happy to reach out if you want to have questions that are specific. You can email the bluebeam@uscad.com. My initial email was on the very first screen to the PowerPoint here. Call us if you got questions. And just from myself, thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time today. It's a good 45 minutes or more out of your day. Appreciate it for sure. If you have more questions, I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. I'll try to just type those questions, the answers to those questions inside the questions panel. If I don't get to it, again, I will respond to all of those in the spreadsheet link that everyone's going to be getting, probably Friday or Monday by next week. So with that, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.